The bloodstain on Priscilla Bennett's worn cotton dress had long since dried to a rust brown when she stumbled through the snowdrifts outside Walla Walla, Washington Territory, her hands clutching the small swell of her belly as though sheer will could protect the child growing within from the bitter December cold of 1883. She had been walking for 2 days since her father threw her belongings into the mud outside their farmhouse and told her never to return. The shame she brought upon their family, he said, was worse than death itself. Her mother had watched from the window, tears streaming down her face, but she did not intervene. No one intervened when a woman found herself in Priscilla's condition without a husband, without even the promise of one. The man who had whispered promises in her ear had disappeared the moment she told him about the baby, taking a job on a cattle drive heading south. Or so she heard from the whispers that followed her through town before her father discovered her secret. The snow had started falling that morning, light flakes at first, then growing heavier as the afternoon wore on. Priscilla had hoped to reach the next town, a small settlement she had heard about from travelers, but the landscape all looked the same now, buried under white. Her feet were numb inside her thin boots, and her fingers had stopped hurting an hour ago, which she suspected was not a good sign. The shawl she clutched around her shoulders was threadbare, doing little against the wind that cut through the valley. She did not want to stop walking because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant confronting the reality of her situation. She was 19 years old, pregnant, alone, and walking through a snowstorm with nowhere to go. The baby would come in the spring, assuming she survived the winter. Assuming anyone would take her in. Assuming the shame did not kill her first, her foot caught on something hidden beneath the snow, and she fell hard, her hands instinctively protecting her belly as she crashed into the frozen ground. Pain shot through her knees and palms, but she barely felt it through the numbing cold. She lay there for a moment, breathing hard, watching her breath form clouds in the frigid air. It would be so easy to just stay here, to let the snow cover her like a blanket, to stop fighting against the inevitable. But the baby deserved better than that. Whatever mistakes Priscilla had made, whatever shame she carried, the innocent life inside her deserved a chance. She pushed herself up on trembling arms and forced herself to stand. One foot in front of the other. That was all she had to do. Just keep moving. The world was growing darker, the gray afternoon fading into the deeper gray of evening. Through the falling snow, Priscilla could barely see more than a few feet ahead. She did not know if she was still following the road or if she had wandered off into the open wilderness. Her thoughts were becoming fuzzy, disconnected, like trying to hold onto water. She thought about her mother, about the last glimpse of her face in the window. She thought about Sunday mornings in church, about the way the congregation would whisper and stare. She thought about the baby, about tiny fingers and toes, about whether she would have a son or daughter, about all the things she would never be able to provide. She thought about how cold she was, and how tired, and how it might not be so bad to just rest for a moment. Her legs gave out without warning and she crumpled into the snow. This time, she could not make herself stand. The white surrounded her, endless and indifferent, and she closed her eyes against the wind. She did not hear the horse at first. The sound came to her as if from very far away, muffled by the snow and the fog creeping into her mind. Hoofbeats, steady and deliberate, coming closer. She tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely a whisper, swallowed by the wind. Then silence fell over her like a heavy blanket, and she knew nothing more. Samuel Cross had been riding fence lines for 3 days, checking the winter grazing lands for the ranch where he worked, when the storm caught him. He knew these mountains well enough to find his way back even in heavy snow, and his horse, A sturdy bay mare named Copper had carried him through worse. Still, the wind was picking up and the temperature was dropping fast. He needed to find shelter soon, maybe the line shack another mile east, hole up until the worst passed. He was 24 years old and had been working cattle since he was old enough to sit a horse. His father had been a rancher in Montana before a harsh winter killed off most of their herd, and his parents decided to try their luck farther west. They had settled in the Walla Walla Valley when Samuel was 16, drawn by the promise of good grazing land and milder winters. His father was dead now, kicked by a horse 2 years back, and his mother had returned to her family in Oregon. Samuel stayed because ranching was all he knew, all he wanted to know. He was good at it and the work suited him. He almost missed the dark shape in the snow. Copper shied slightly, tossing her head, and Samuel's attention sharpened. At first he thought it was a fallen log or maybe a deer, but as he drew closer, his heart lurched. It was a person, a woman from the looks of the dress, lying motionless in the snow. He was off his horse in an instant, dropping to his knees beside her. She was curled on her side, her face pale as the snow around her, her lips tinged blue. He pulled off his glove and pressed his fingers to her throat, searching for a pulse. There, faint but present. She was alive, but barely. Samuel did not waste time wondering who she was or what she was doing out here alone. Those questions could wait. Right now, he needed to get her warm and dry, or she would die. He gathered her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, and lifted her. She did not stir, her head lolling against his shoulder. He settled her as gently as he could across Copper's saddle, then swung up behind her, holding her against his chest with one arm while he took up the reins with the other. The line shack was closer than the main ranch house, and in this weather, closer was all that mattered. He urged Copper forward, trusting the mare to find her footing in the deepening snow. The woman in his arms was so cold, her body limp and unresponsive. He tried to shield her from the wind as best he could, tucking her face against his coat. It took 20 minutes to reach the shack, though it felt like hours. The small cabin was dark and cold, but it had 4 walls and a roof, which was more than the open wilderness offered. Samuel dismounted carefully, keeping his hold on the woman, and kicked the door open. He laid her on the narrow cot in the corner, then hurried back out to tend to Copper, leading her into the lean-to shelter beside the cabin and quickly unsaddling her. The horse would be all right with the windbreak and some feed. Back inside, Samuel worked with practiced efficiency. He got a fire going in the small stove, coaxing the kindling to life with steady breath and patience. Once the flames caught, he turned his attention to the woman. Her clothes were soaked through, her skin like ice. He needed to get her dry and warm and quickly. He hesitated for only a moment, aware of propriety, but propriety would not save her life. He carefully removed her wet shawl and dress, trying to be as respectful as possible, then wrapped her in the dry blankets from the storage chest. The whole time, she did not move or make a sound, and that worried him more than anything. It was only when he lifted her to tuck the blankets more securely around her that he felt it, the slight swell of her belly beneath his hands. She was with child. Understanding crashed over him, followed quickly by anger at whoever had let a pregnant woman end up alone in a snowstorm. He wrapped her more carefully, making sure the blankets covered her completely, then sat beside the cot to wait. The fire was warming the small space, driving back the worst of the cold. Samuel kept watch over her, occasionally checking her pulse, adjusting the blankets, adding wood to the stove. Her color was slowly improving, the deathly pallor giving way to something closer to natural, though her lips were still too pale. It was nearly an hour before she stirred, a small movement at first, then more pronounced. Her eyelids fluttered, and she made a soft sound of confusion. Samuel leaned forward, relief flooding through him. "Easy now," he said quietly. "You are safe. You are in a cabin out of the storm." Her eyes opened fully, wide and disoriented, a deep brown that caught the firelight. She stared at him for a long moment, then tried to sit up, gasping. She looked down at herself, realizing she was undressed beneath the blankets, and panic flashed across her face. "Your clothes were soaked through," Samuel explained quickly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You would have died of cold if I had not gotten you dry. I did not. I was respectful, I promise you that." She searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have reassured her because some of the panic faded. She pulled the blankets tighter around herself, trembling. "Where am I?" "A line shack about 5 miles east of the main ranch. I found you in the snow." "What were you doing out there?" The question seemed to drain what little strength she had regained. She looked away from him, her jaw tightening. "Walking. In a snowstorm, without proper clothes. I did not have much choice in the matter." Her voice was bitter, and her hand moved instinctively to her belly. Samuel understood then, or thought he did. He had seen it before, women cast out for the sin of being with child outside of marriage. It always made him angry, the injustice of it. The man was equally responsible, but it was always the woman who paid the price. "You have family around here?" he asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Not anymore." She met his eyes again, and there was a fierce pride in her gaze despite everything. "My name is Priscilla Bennett. I appreciate you saving my life, but I will leave as soon as I am able. I will not impose on your charity." "Leave and go where?" Samuel kept his voice gentle. "The storm is getting worse, and you are in no condition to travel. You will stay here until the weather clears and you are stronger. Then we can figure out what comes next." "I cannot pay you." "Did I ask for payment?" She studied him warily, as if waiting for the catch, the demand that would come with his help. Samuel had seen that look before, too, on the faces of creatures that had been kicked too many times to trust an extended hand. "My name is Samuel Cross," he said. "I work for the Flying W Ranch, been here about 6 years now. That is my horse in the shelter outside. Her name is Copper, and she is probably wondering why I am taking so long to give her grain. I'm going to go tend to her and hang your clothes to dry by the fire. There is some hardtack and jerky in the cupboard if you are hungry, and water in the canteen. I will be back in a few minutes." He stood and headed for the door, giving her space to process everything. Outside, the storm had indeed worsened, the snow falling so thick he could barely see the lean-to. He took his time with Copper, brushing her down, making sure she had feed and water, letting Priscilla have some privacy to collect herself. When he returned to the cabin, she had pulled the blankets around herself more securely and was sitting up against the wall. Some color had returned to her cheeks, which he took as a good sign. He gathered her wet clothes and hung them from nails near the stove, then busied himself making coffee from the supplies kept in the shack. "How far along are you?" he asked, keeping his tone conversational. She was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then, 4 months, near as I can tell. "And the father?" "Gone. He said he loved me, said we would marry, and then when I told him about the baby, he was on a cattle drive heading south within the week. I have not seen him since." Samuel poured coffee into 2 tin cups, then brought one to her. She took it gratefully, wrapping her cold hands around the warmth. "Your family?" he asked. "My father is a devout man, very concerned with appearances, with what the church will say. When he found out, he told me I was no daughter of his and put me out." Her voice was steady, but Samuel could hear the hurt underneath. "My mother cried, but she did not stop him. I have a younger sister, but she is only 14. She could not help even if she wanted to." Where were you trying to get to? I do not know. Anywhere. I thought maybe I could find work in the next town, but I do not even know what town that is. I just kept walking until I could not walk anymore. Samuel settled onto the floor near the stove, sipping his coffee. Outside, the wind howled around the cabin, rattling the shutters. You are lucky I was checking fence lines. Not many people come out this way, especially not in winter. Lucky, she repeated, and there was no humor in it. I suppose you are right. Though I am not sure how much longer my luck will hold. What do you mean? She looked down at her belly, her hand resting protectively over it. I have no money, no home, no husband. What kind of life can I give a child? Maybe it would have been better if you had not found me. At least then the baby would not have to suffer. Do not talk like that. Samuel's voice came out sharper than he intended. I am sorry, but that is no way to think. You are alive, and so is your baby. That means there is still hope. Hope for what? Do you think anyone will hire a woman with a bastard child? Do you think I can just walk into town and find respectable work? I know what happens to women like me. We end up in brothels or worse, doing whatever we must to survive. Not if I can help it. The words were out before Samuel fully thought them through, but once spoken, he knew he meant them. There was something about this woman, about her fierce determination even in the face of impossible odds, that called to something in him. He had been alone for a long time, focused on work and surviving from season to season. He had not let himself think about the future, about family or children or any of the things other men his age were building. But looking at Priscilla now, at the way she held herself despite everything, he felt something shift inside him. What do you mean? She asked carefully. Samuel set down his coffee cup and met her eyes. I mean that you do not have to face this alone. The Flying W is a good outfit run by decent people. They might have work you could do at least until the baby comes, or if not there, then somewhere nearby. You can read and write. Yes, my mother insisted on it. Well then, there are options. Maybe you could teach children or help with bookkeeping or any number of things. And I can help. I have some money saved, not much, but enough to tide you over until you get on your feet. Priscilla shook her head slowly. Why would you do that? You do not know me. I could be anyone. You are a woman who needs help, Samuel said simply. And I am someone who can provide it. It does not need to be more complicated than that. Everything is more complicated than that. But there was longing in her voice, a desperate want to believe him. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. The cabin was small and drafty, but with the fire going, it was warm enough. Samuel found himself watching Priscilla from the corner of his eye, noting the way she fought to keep her eyes open, the exhaustion written into every line of her body. You should sleep, he said. You need rest. Where will you sleep? I will make do by the fire. I have slept in worse places, believe me. She looked like she wanted to argue, but another wave of exhaustion washed over her, and she nodded. Thank you, Samuel, for everything. I cannot repay you, but thank you. Get some rest, Priscilla. We will figure out the rest tomorrow. He watched as she settled back onto the cot, pulling the blankets close. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. Samuel added more wood to the fire, then settled himself on the floor with his saddle as a pillow and his coat as a blanket. It was not comfortable, but he had meant what he said about sleeping in worse places. As he lay there, listening to Priscilla's quiet breathing and the howl of the wind, Samuel found himself thinking about the future in a way he had not in years. He thought about the small house he had been saving to build, the plot of land the ranch owner had promised to sell him when he had enough money. He thought about what it might be like to have someone to come home to have a family waiting. He thought about the child Priscilla carried, innocent and undeserving of the hardship ahead. Before he drifted off to sleep, he made a decision. He did not know where it would lead or if Priscilla would even accept his help, but he knew he could not walk away from this. He could not leave her to face the world alone. The storm blew itself out by morning, leaving the world buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Samuel woke to pale sunlight filtering through the gaps in the shutters and the sound of movement from the cot. Priscilla was awake, still wrapped in blankets, watching him with uncertain eyes. "Good morning," he said, pushing himself up. "How are you feeling?" "Sore," she admitted, "and hungry, but alive thanks to you." Samuel checked the supplies in the cabin and found enough to make a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush and coffee. It was not much, but it was hot and filling. Priscilla ate slowly, as if her body had forgotten what it was like to have food. Her clothes were dry now, and he turned his back while she dressed, giving her what privacy he could in the small space. "The snow has stopped," he said, looking out through the door. "I need to get back to the ranch, let them know I am all right. They will be worried after the storm." "You will come with me." "Samuel, I cannot just show up at your ranch. What will people think?" "They will think I found someone who needed help and did the right thing." "Come on, Priscilla. You cannot stay out here alone, and you certainly cannot go back to wandering in the snow. Let me at least get you somewhere safe and warm, then we can figure out the rest." She bit her lip, clearly torn between pride and practicality. Practicality won. "All right, but I will work for my keep. I will not be a burden. You could never be that." The ride back to the Flying W took most of the morning. Samuel rode Copper with Priscilla sitting in front of him, and he tried not to notice how right it felt to have her there, the way she fit against him. The landscape was transformed by the snow, everything white and gleaming under the winter sun. In other circumstances, it might have been beautiful. The Flying W Ranch sprawled across a wide valley, with the main house and outbuildings clustered together near a creek. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and as they approached, Samuel could see people moving about, going about the business of running a ranch even in winter. He felt Priscilla tense in his arms as they drew closer, and he understood. She was about to face the judgment of strangers, to lay bare her circumstances to people who might condemn her just as her own family had. "It will be all right," he murmured. "I promise." They stopped in front of the main house, and Samuel helped Priscilla down before dismounting himself. The front door opened, and Margaret Winters, the ranch owner's wife, emerged onto the porch. She was a handsome woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Samuel Cross, we were beginning to worry about you," she called out. "That storm came up fast." Her gaze shifted to Priscilla, taking in her worn dress and obvious condition. Her expression did not change, but Samuel saw the way her eyes softened slightly. "Found her near the line shack, madam," Samuel explained. "She was caught in the storm. I am hoping we might find some work for her, at least for a while." Margaret descended the steps and approached them, studying Priscilla directly. "What is your name, girl?" "Priscilla Bennett, madam." Her voice was steady, meeting Margaret's gaze without flinching. "Where are you from?" "Outside Walla Walla, but I have no family there anymore." Margaret nodded slowly, understanding passing between the two women. "Can you cook?" "Yes, madam." "So?" "Yes, madam." "Read and write?" "Yes, madam." "Well then, I expect we can find use for you." "Lord knows I could use help with the mending, and the men are always hungry. You will stay in the spare room off the kitchen for now. We will discuss wages once I see what you can do. Does that suit you?" Priscilla looked stunned, as if she had expected immediate rejection. "Yes, madam." "Thank you, madam. I will work hard, I promise. See that you do." Margaret turned back toward the house. "Come along then, you look half frozen. Samuel, you best get that horse tended to and report to Tom. He will want to know about the fence lines." Samuel caught Priscilla's eye and gave her an encouraging nod. She returned a small, tentative smile before following Margaret into the house. He watched her go, feeling the cold more keenly now that she was not beside him, then led Copper toward the barn. Tom Winters, the ranch owner, was in the barn checking on the horses. He was a tall man, weathered by years of outdoor work but fair in his dealings. He looked up as Samuel entered. "Good to see you made it back," Tom said. "Storm had us worried. Sorry about that, sir." "I holed up in the line shack until it passed. Found someone who needed help on the way." "So I heard. Margaret just sent word. You vouch for this girl." "I do, sir. She is in a hard situation through no fault of her own, and she is willing to work. I would appreciate it if she could stay on for a while." Tom studied him, and Samuel met his gaze steadily. Whatever Tom saw there, he nodded. "All right then, but she pulls her weight same as anyone else." "She will, sir, thank you." Over the following weeks, Priscilla proved herself a dozen times over. She rose early and worked late, taking on whatever tasks Margaret assigned without complaint. She mended clothes, helped in the kitchen, organized the household accounts, and even taught the ranch hands' children their letters in the evenings. The men were initially suspicious of her, as was natural, but her quiet competence and refusal to be cowed won them over. Samuel watched her settle into life at the ranch, watched her begin to lose some of the wariness that had been in her eyes that first day. She still carried herself with caution, as if waiting for everything to be snatched away, but gradually he saw glimpses of who she must have been before the world turned against her. She had a quick mind and a dry sense of humor that surprised him. When she smiled, which was not often enough, it lit up her whole face. He found excuses to be near her, to talk to her when their paths crossed. At first, their conversations were brief and practical, but slowly they grew longer, more personal. She told him about growing up on her father's farm, about her dreams of becoming a teacher before circumstances intervened. He told her about his childhood in Montana, about the father he had loved and lost, about his hopes of having his own spread someday. "You really think that is possible?" she asked one evening. They were in the barn, Samuel tending to Copper while Priscilla gathered eggs from the chickens that roosted in the loft. "Having your own place, I mean." "I do. Tom has promised to sell me 40 acres when I have enough saved. It is good land with water and timber. I could run a small herd, enough to make a living." "That sounds wonderful. You deserve it, Samuel. You work harder than anyone I have ever met." He looked up from checking Copper's hooves to find her watching him with something warm in her eyes. His heart kicked in his chest. "What about you, Priscilla? What do you want for your future?" She rested a hand on her growing belly. The baby was more obvious now at 5 months, a clear swell beneath her dress. "I want my child to have a good life. Beyond that, I do not let myself want too much. It hurts less that way." Samuel set down Copper's hoof and straightened, taking a step closer to her. "You should want more. You deserve more." "Do I? Sometimes I am not sure. I made choices, Samuel. I let myself believe a man who only told me what I wanted to hear. I let myself hope for something that was never going to happen. The baby is innocent, but me. Maybe I deserve exactly what I got." "No," the word came out fierce. "Do not ever think that. He is the one who should be ashamed, not you. You trusted someone you cared about. That is not a sin. Try telling that to my father. Try telling that to anyone in town. I do not care what they think. I know you, Priscilla. I have seen you work yourself to exhaustion to earn your keep. I have seen you help others without being asked. I have seen your strength and your kindness. Anyone who judges you does not know what I know." She blinked rapidly, and he realized she was fighting tears. "Why are you so good to me? I do not understand it. You owe me nothing." "Maybe I do not do it because I owe you. Maybe I do it because I want to." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. Priscilla looked away first, breaking the moment. I should get these eggs to Margaret. She hurried out of the barn before Samuel could respond, leaving him alone with his racing thoughts. He knew what he was feeling, had known for weeks even if he had not wanted to admit it. He was falling for Priscilla Bennett, falling for her courage and her determination, and the way she smiled when she thought no one was watching. But she was vulnerable, dependent on the charity of others, and he did not want her to feel pressured or obligated. He needed to be careful, to give her time and space to heal from everything she had been through. But patience had never been Samuel's strong suit, and every day it grew harder to keep his feelings to himself. Winter deepened, and with it came the hard work of keeping a ranch running through the coldest months. The men worked from before dawn until after dark, feeding cattle, breaking ice on water troughs, maintaining buildings and equipment. Priscilla continued her work in the house, growing rounder as the baby inside her grew. She moved more slowly now, tiring more easily, but she never complained. Christmas came, and Margaret insisted on a proper celebration. She cooked a feast with Priscilla's help, and the entire ranch gathered in the main house to eat and share stories. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was music and laughter. Samuel found himself sitting next to Priscilla, their shoulders touching, watching the others dance. "You know how to dance?" she asked him. "Some. My mother taught me, said every man should know how to dance properly. I used to love it. Before everything happened, there were dances in town every month. I would go with my sister and we would dance until our feet hurt. Would you like to dance now?" She looked down at her belly, then back at him with a rueful smile. "I am not sure I can. I am not exactly light on my feet these days. We do not have to move much, just sway a little, come on." He stood and offered his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, and he helped her to her feet. They found a spot at the edge of the room, away from the more energetic dancers, and Samuel took her carefully in his arms. She fit against him perfectly, her head just reaching his shoulder. They swayed gently to the music, barely moving, and Samuel felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like coming home. "Thank you," Priscilla murmured, "for everything, for saving my life, for bringing me here, for treating me like I matter. I do not think I will ever be able to repay you. You do not have to repay me. Having you here is enough." She pulled back slightly to look up at him, her brown eyes searching his face. "Samuel, I need you to understand something. I care about you, more than I should, probably. But I cannot offer you anything. I am about to have another man's child. I have nothing to my name, no prospects, no future. You could have any woman you wanted. Do not tie yourself to me out of some misplaced sense of duty." "Is that what you think this is? Duty? What else could it be?" Samuel stopped swaying and cupped her face gently in his hands. Around them, the party continued, but he was aware only of her. "Priscilla, I am going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I am falling in love with you. Not because I feel obligated, not because I feel sorry for you, but because of who you are. I love your strength and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you laugh and the way you never give up even when you have every reason to. I love everything about you." Her breath caught and tears spilled over onto her cheeks. "You cannot, it is not possible." "Why not?" "Because no one could love me, not like this, not knowing everything." "I know everything and I love you anyway." "Actually, I love you because of it, because you have been through hell and you are still standing. That is not weakness, Priscilla. That is strength." "What about the baby?" "What about the baby? That child is part of you, and I already love them too. I would be honored to help you raise them, to give them my name if you would let me." "You do not know what you are saying." "I know exactly what I am saying. Marry me, Priscilla. Let me take care of you and the baby. Let me give you the life you deserve." She was shaking her head, but he could see the longing in her eyes, the desperate want to believe him. "It is too fast. We barely know each other. I know everything I need to know, but if you need time, I will wait. I will wait as long as you need, Priscilla. Just do not tell me it is impossible. Do not tell me you do not feel something too." "Of course I feel something," she whispered. "I think I started falling for you the moment I woke up and saw you watching over me. But Samuel, I am so afraid. I was hurt before, and I do not think I could survive being hurt again." "I will never hurt you. I swear it on my life. You and that baby, you would be my whole world. Please, Priscilla, say yes." She looked at him for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, and then slowly, wonderfully, she nodded. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Joy exploded through Samuel's chest. He pulled her close, holding her as tightly as he dared, and she clung to him, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Around them, the party continued, oblivious to the fact that Samuel's entire world had just shifted on its axis. They told Margaret and Tom later that evening, and the older couple exchanged knowing looks, as if they had seen this coming long before Samuel and Priscilla had. Margaret hugged Priscilla tightly and told her she was getting a good man. Tom shook Samuel's hand and told him he had made a fine choice. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in the small church in Walla Walla. It was a simple ceremony, with just the ranch folks in attendance, but it was perfect. Priscilla wore a dress Margaret helped her make, pale blue calico that accommodated her growing belly. Samuel wore his best clothes and tried not to shake as the preacher led them through the vows. When it came time to kiss his bride, he did so gently, reverently, unable to believe his good fortune. They moved into a small cabin on the ranch property, one that had been used for storage but which the hands helped Samuel clean out and make livable. It was not much, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs. Priscilla made curtains for the windows and braided rugs for the floor, transforming the bare space into a home. Samuel continued his work on the ranch, but now he had something to come home to at the end of each long day. Priscilla would have dinner waiting, and they would sit together at the small table and talk about everything and nothing. At night, he held her carefully, mindful of the baby between them, and marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. As winter gave way to early spring, Priscilla grew heavier, moving more slowly, tiring more easily. Samuel worried constantly, hovering over her until she laughingly told him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. But he could not help it. The thought of anything happening to her filled him with cold dread. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him one evening. "I will be fine. I know, but that does not stop me from worrying." She took his hand and placed it on her belly, and he felt the baby kick against his palm. The sensation never failed to amaze him, the proof of life growing inside her. "Feel that. That is a strong baby. Everything is going to be all right." "I love you," he said, for perhaps the 100th time since their wedding. "I love you too. I do not think I ever believed I would get to say that and mean it, but I do. I love you, Samuel Cross, more than I thought possible." He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and felt her smile against his lips. The baby came on a warm April evening, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Samuel had been in the barn when Priscilla's water broke, and by the time he got her to the house and sent for Margaret and the midwife, the contractions were coming hard and fast. He was banned from the room, sent to pace outside with Tom while the women worked. The hours that followed were the longest of Samuel's life. He could hear Priscilla crying out in pain, and it took everything in him not to break down the door and go to her. Tom sat with him, calm and steady, occasionally putting a hand on his shoulder. "First time is always the hardest," Tom said, "but she is strong. She will be fine." How do you stand it? Hearing someone you love in pain and not being able to do anything? You stand it because you have to, because being there on the other side is worth it. Trust me. Finally, as the sun was beginning to rise, a new sound joined the others, the thin, outraged wail of a newborn baby. Samuel was on his feet in an instant, but Margaret appeared in the doorway before he could go in. "Congratulations," she said with a tired smile. "You have a son. Both mother and baby are doing well." A son. Samuel felt his knees go weak with relief. "Can I see them?" "Go on, but be quick. She needs rest." He entered the room to find Priscilla propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he approached, and the smile she gave him was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Samuel sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the baby in her arms. He was tiny, with a wrinkled red face and a shock of dark hair. His eyes were closed, his tiny hands curled into fists. Samuel reached out a finger and the baby's hand closed around it, holding on with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Samuel breathed. "You are amazing. I cannot believe you did this." "We did this," Priscilla corrected. "All of us together." What should we name him? They had discussed names over the past weeks, going back and forth on various options. But looking down at his son, Samuel knew exactly what felt right. "Thomas," he said. "After Tom Winters, if he had not given you a chance, we might never have ended up here." "Thomas Cross," Priscilla repeated, testing how it sounded. "I like it. Thomas it is." Baby Thomas was a good child, healthy and strong despite being early. He nursed well and slept better than anyone had a right to expect. Priscilla recovered quickly from the birth, and soon the small cabin was filled with the sounds of a baby. The ranch hands, rough men used to hard living, proved surprisingly gentle with the infant, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to try to get him to smile. Samuel fell into fatherhood as if he had been made for it. He would rise in the night to walk with Thomas when he fussed, singing old songs his own father had sung to him. He changed diapers without complaint and learned to recognize the different types of cries: hungry, tired, uncomfortable, lonely. Watching Samuel with the baby made Priscilla fall even more deeply in love with him. "He will not remember that you are not his blood father," she said one night as Samuel rocked Thomas to sleep. "In every way that matters, you are his papa." "I know," Samuel replied, "and I will make sure he knows how much he is loved, both of you, every single day." Spring turned to summer, and Thomas grew, becoming more alert and responsive. He smiled for the first time at 6 weeks, and Samuel swore later that it had been directed at him. The baby loved being outside, would stop crying the moment they stepped through the door, as if the open sky called to something in him already. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Samuel continued working for the Flying W, saving every penny he could toward buying that land Tom had promised him. Priscilla took in sewing and helped Margaret with the household accounts, contributing what she could to their savings. It was slow going, but they were building something together, building a future. One afternoon in late July, a rider came to the ranch looking for Priscilla. Samuel happened to be near the main house when the man arrived, and something about him set Samuel's teeth on edge. He was young, maybe 22 or 23, well-dressed in a way that suggested money. He dismounted and asked one of the hands where he could find Priscilla Bennett. "Who is asking?" Samuel said, stepping forward. The man looked him over dismissively. "I am Peter Samuels. I have business with Miss Bennett." "It is Mrs. Cross now," Samuel corrected, his voice hard. "And whatever business you have, you can discuss with her husband present." Something flickered in Peter's eyes, surprise maybe, or anger. "I see. Well then, perhaps you could tell me where I might find your wife." Samuel did not like this, did not like it at all, but he could hardly refuse to let the man see Priscilla. "Wait here." He found Priscilla in the cabin, nursing Thomas. She looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "What is wrong?" "There is a man here to see you. Says his name is Peter Samuels." All the color drained from Priscilla's face. "Peter is here. Why would he come here, you tell me? Who is he, Priscilla?" "He is the baby's father, the one who left." She looked down at Thomas, her hands trembling. "What does he want?" Anger surged through Samuel, hot and fierce, but he forced it down. "I do not know. Do you want to see him?" "I do not know," she whispered. "I do not know what to do." "You do not have to see him if you do not want to. I can send him away." She was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I should at least hear what he has to say. But Samuel, please stay with me. I do not want to face him alone." "I am not going anywhere." They went together to where Peter waited, and Samuel watched as Priscilla's spine straightened, her chin lifting. She was nervous, he could tell, but she did not let it show. Thomas was in her arms, nursing contentedly, oblivious to the tension. Peter's eyes went immediately to the baby, and something complicated crossed his face. "Priscilla, you look well." "What do you want, Peter?" Her voice was cool, controlled. "I heard you were here. It took me some time to track you down." He looked at Samuel. "May I speak with you privately?" "No," Priscilla said before Samuel could respond. "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my husband." "Your husband?" Peter's lip curled. "You moved on quickly. You have no right to judge me. You left. You ran the moment I told you about the baby." "I was scared. I was young and stupid and I panicked. But I have spent the last months thinking about it and I want to make things right. I want to marry you, Priscilla. I want to be a father to our child." The words hung in the air like stones. Samuel felt his heart hammering in his chest, felt the ground shifting beneath him. He looked at Priscilla and saw her staring at Peter in disbelief. "You want to marry me," she repeated slowly. "Now, after everything?" "Yes, I know I do not deserve it, but I am asking anyway." "My family has money, Priscilla. I can give you and the baby a good life. You would not have to work or struggle. You would want for nothing. Except trust, except respect, except love that does not disappear the moment things get difficult. I love you. I always loved you. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. But I am here now. I am ready to do the right thing." Priscilla looked down at Thomas, then over at Samuel. He tried to keep his face neutral, tried not to let his fear show. Because he was afraid, terrified that she would choose the easier path, the man who could give her money and security and claim to be the baby's real father. "You are too late, Peter," Priscilla said quietly. "I am already married to a man who is 10 times the person you will ever be. A man who found me dying in the snow and saved my life. A man who chose me and this baby even though he had every reason to walk away. A man who treats me with respect and kindness and love every single day. Why would I ever give that up for someone who proved they cannot be trusted? But I am the baby's father. Does not that mean anything?" "No," Samuel said, speaking for the first time. "It does not. Being a father is about more than blood. It is about being there day after day through the hard times and the good. It is about putting your child's needs before your own. You had your chance and you ran. Thomas is my son now and Priscilla is my wife. We are a family and you have no place in it." Peter looked between them, seeming to finally understand that he had already lost. "I could make trouble for you. I could tell people the baby is not yours, spread rumors." "Try it," Samuel said, his voice like ice. "See what happens when you go up against the Flying W. Tom Winters is well respected around here, and he knows what you did. Who do you think people will believe, him or some outsider who abandoned a pregnant woman?" Peter's face flushed with anger, but he must have realized Samuel was right. He turned back to Priscilla one last time. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find my family. I will not change my mind. Goodbye, Peter. I hope you find happiness somewhere, but it will not be with me." They watched him mount his horse and ride away, disappearing down the road. Only when he was out of sight did Samuel let out the breath he had been holding. He turned to Priscilla and saw tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said gently, pulling her into his arms, careful of the baby between them. "It is all right. He is gone." "I am not crying because I am sad," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I am crying because I am so grateful. Because I could have ended up with him, could have spent my whole life with someone who did not really love me. But instead I got you. I got this life, this family. I got everything I never knew I wanted." Samuel held her tighter. "You gave me everything too. Before you, I was just going through the motions, working and sleeping and working some more. But now I have a reason for all of it. I have you and Thomas, and that makes every hard day worth it." Thomas chose that moment to pull away from nursing and look up at them, his dark eyes alert and curious. Samuel reached down and took him, lifting him up carefully. The baby made a small cooing sound and Samuel laughed. "You hear that, little man? Your mama and I just had a very important conversation about how much we love each other and how much we love you. You are stuck with us, I am afraid. We are not letting you go for anything." Priscilla wiped her tears and smiled, watching Samuel with their son. "We should probably head back to the cabin. It is almost time for his nap." As they walked back together, Samuel's arm around Priscilla's waist, Thomas cradled against his chest, Samuel felt a profound sense of rightness. This was his family. This was his life. Everything he had been working toward, everything he had hoped for. It was all right here. That evening, after Thomas was asleep in his cradle and they were lying in bed together, Priscilla rolled over to face Samuel. "Thank you for standing up for us today, for sending Peter away. You did most of the standing up yourself. I was just there for backup. Still, it meant everything to hear you call Thomas your son, to hear you claim us both. I know I tell you I love you every day, but Samuel, I really do love you, more than I thought it was possible to love another person." He kissed her, slow and deep, pouring everything he felt into it. "I love you too. More every day. You and Thomas, you are my whole world." They made love that night with a tenderness that spoke of everything they had been through together, everything they had built. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Samuel felt a peace he had never known before. He had found his place in the world, and it was right here with this woman and this child. Summer gave way to autumn, and Thomas continued to grow and thrive. He was sitting up on his own now, babbling away in the nonsensical language of babies, reaching for everything he could get his hands on. Samuel taught him to ride by sitting him on Copper's back, holding him securely while the patient mare walked slow circles around the corral. Thomas would laugh and kick his feet, fearless already. In October, Tom Winters called Samuel into his office. Samuel went with some trepidation, wondering if there was a problem with his work. But Tom just gestured for him to sit and leaned back in his chair. "You have been with me for 6 years now, Samuel," Tom said. "In all that time, you have been one of my best hands, never shirking, never complaining, always doing whatever needed to be done. That is worth something." "I appreciate that, sir." "I know you have been saving to buy that land I offered. How much do you have put away?" Samuel named the amount, trying not to feel discouraged by how far he still had to go. Tom nodded slowly. "Here is what I am thinking. You have worked hard and you have a family now. You need your own place. So I am willing to sell you those 40 acres for what you have saved, plus you work off the rest over the next 2 years. You would still work for the Flying W, but you would be building your own spread at the same time. What do you say?" Samuel stared at him, certain he had heard wrong. Sir, that land is worth more than twice what I have saved. I know what it is worth. I am telling you what I will take for it. You and Priscilla, you are good people. You deserve a break. Do we have a deal? Samuel felt emotion clog his throat. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. You will not regret this. I know I will not. Now get out of here and go tell that wife of yours. Samuel practically ran back to the cabin, bursting through the door with a huge smile on his face. Priscilla looked up from where she was playing with Thomas on the floor, startled. What happened? We got the land. Tom is selling us the 40 acres and we can start building right away. Her face lit up with joy. Samuel, that is wonderful. How did you convince him? I did not. He offered, said we had earned it. Samuel scooped up Thomas and spun in a circle, making the baby shriek with laughter. Do you hear that, little man? We are going to build you a proper house with a room just for you and everything. Priscilla stood and wrapped her arms around them both. I cannot believe it. Our own land, our own home. We will build it together, every board and nail. It will be ours, really ours. They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking excitedly about where to place the house, how big to make it, what animals they would raise. Thomas fell asleep to the sound of their voices, secure in the knowledge that he was loved and safe. Work on the new house began in November. Samuel spent every spare moment on the land, clearing brush, laying foundation stones. Several of the other ranch hands helped when they could, and gradually the structure began to take shape. It was not fancy, just a simple ranch house with 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a sitting room, but to Samuel and Priscilla, it was a palace. Priscilla was pregnant again, a fact they discovered in December. She had been feeling tired and queasy for weeks, and when Margaret took her aside and asked pointed questions, the truth became clear. Samuel was thrilled, already imagining Thomas with a younger sibling, imagining their family growing. Are you happy? Priscilla asked him one evening as they walked the land, Thomas toddling between them on unsteady legs. I think I am happier than I have ever been in my life, Samuel answered honestly. Why do you ask? I just want to make sure. You have taken on so much because of me. A wife, a child that was not yours, another baby on the way, building a house. I want to make sure you do not feel trapped. Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. Priscilla Cross, listen to me very carefully. I have never felt trapped for a single moment. Grateful, yes. Blessed, absolutely. But never trapped. You gave me a family, gave me a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. Every challenge we face, I face it gladly because I am facing it with you. Do you understand? She nodded, blinking back tears. I understand. I am sorry. I just sometimes cannot believe this is real, that I get to have this life with you. Believe it, because I am not going anywhere. Thomas chose that moment to plop down in the dirt and start playing with a stick, and they both laughed at his single-minded focus. The baby was walking better every day, getting into everything, curious about the world around him. He looked more like Priscilla than Peter, with her brown eyes and stubborn chin, and Samuel was grateful for that. It made it easier to forget that the boy did not share his blood. The house was finished in March, just weeks before Priscilla's due date. It was rough around the edges, unfinished in places, but it had 4 walls and a roof and windows that let in light. They moved in on a sunny afternoon, carrying their few possessions from the cabin to their new home. Thomas was fascinated by the space, running from room to room on wobbling legs, his laughter echoing off the bare walls. That night they lay in their new bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around them. This is really ours, Priscilla whispered. I keep thinking I am going to wake up and it will all be a dream. Not a dream. Real life. Our life. Samuel placed his hand on her swollen belly and felt the baby kick. Our growing life. Their daughter was born on a warm April evening, exactly 1 year and 2 weeks after Thomas. The birth was easier this time, faster, and by the time the midwife arrived, the baby was already here, squalling her displeasure at the world. Samuel was in the room this time, holding Priscilla's hand, and the moment he saw his daughter, he fell completely in love. "She looks like you," Priscilla said tiredly, and it was true. The baby had Samuel's nose and the shape of his face. There would be no question who her father was. "What should we name her?" Samuel asked, carefully taking the baby from the midwife. "I was thinking Margaret after Mrs. Winters. She has been so good to us." "Margaret Cross," Samuel said, testing it out. "It is perfect. Hello there, Margaret. Welcome to the family." Thomas was not quite sure what to make of his new sister at first, staring at her with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. But when Margaret wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, his face split into a huge smile, and Samuel knew they would be close. Life with 2 children was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Samuel worked from before dawn until after dark, splitting his time between the Flying W and his own land. Priscilla managed the household, cared for the children, tended the garden they had planted, and still found time to help Samuel with the livestock when she could. Some days, Samuel fell into bed so tired he could barely move, but he had never been happier. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic toddler, talking more every day, asking endless questions about everything he saw. Margaret was a calmer baby than her brother had been, content to watch the world with serious dark eyes. The 2 of them together were a handful, but they brought joy into every moment. The years passed in a blur of hard work and small triumphs. Samuel built up their herd slowly, buying a few cattle here, trading for a few there, until they had enough to start turning a real profit. Priscilla's sewing business grew as word spread of her skill, and she took on more work than she could handle, eventually teaching several other ranch wives so they could help. When Thomas was 4 and Margaret was 3, Priscilla found herself pregnant again. This time, Samuel joked that they should just assume they would have a baby every year and plan accordingly. The pregnancy was harder on her than the others had been, and Samuel worried constantly, but she assured him everything was fine. Their second son was born in October, a big baby with a shock of red hair that came from neither of them, but must have been hiding somewhere in their family lines. They named him James, and he proved to be the loudest of their children, letting his opinions be known from the very first day. Life settled into a pattern of work and family, seasons and celebrations. The ranch grew, and Samuel hired his first hand, a young man fresh from the East who knew nothing about cattle but was willing to learn. Thomas followed Samuel everywhere, desperate to help with the ranch work, while Margaret preferred to stay near her mother, learning to cook and sew and care for James. Samuel often thought back to that day in the snow when he found Priscilla, more dead than alive. If he had been riding a different route, if he had been an hour later, if she had fallen somewhere he could not see her, their whole story would have been different. The thought filled him with gratitude so profound, it sometimes took his breath away. One evening, when Thomas was 8 and starting to help with real ranch work, when Margaret was 7 and could already sew better than most adults, when James was 4 and getting into everything, Priscilla and Samuel sat on their porch watching the sunset. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm air. "Are you happy?" Samuel asked, echoing Priscilla's question from years ago. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied. "Sometimes I think about the girl I was, walking through the snow, ready to give up." She could never have imagined this life, this family. She could never have imagined being this blessed. "I am the blessed one. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. We gave each other everything. That is how it works." Thomas came running up to the porch then, his face flushed with excitement. "Papa, can you teach me to rope tomorrow? I have been practicing with the post like you showed me, and I think I am ready for a real target." "Sure thing, son. First thing after morning chores." "Thanks, Papa." Thomas ran back to his siblings, already bragging about what he would learn. Samuel pulled Priscilla closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. In the distance, the mountains stood silhouetted against the darkening sky. The land stretched out before them, their land, earned through hard work and determination and love. "You ever wonder what Peter's life turned out like?" Samuel asked. It was something they never discussed, the man who had started everything by abandoning Priscilla. "Not really," Priscilla said honestly. "Sometimes I think I should be angry with him, but I cannot be. If he had not left, I would never have met you, so in a strange way I am grateful. His cowardice led me to your courage." "I was not courageous. I just did what anyone would do." "No, Samuel. Most people would have ridden past. Most people would have thought it was not their problem. But you stopped. You chose to get involved. You chose us over and over again. That is courage." Margaret wandered over to them, dragging her worn doll behind her. "Mama, can you tell us a story before bed?" "What kind of story?" "The one about how Papa found you in the snow. That is my favorite." Priscilla looked up at Samuel and smiled. "Mine too. Come on, let us get you all washed up, and I will tell it one more time." The children gathered around as they did every night, and Priscilla told them the story of how their family began. She told them about the snow and the cold, about the cowboy who appeared when all hope was lost, about the kindness of strangers and the power of love. The children listened with rapt attention, even though they had heard it 100 times before, interrupting occasionally with questions or comments. Thomas, at 8, was starting to understand more of the implications of the story. "So I am not really your son by blood, Papa?" he asked one night after the story was finished. Samuel pulled the boy onto his lap, looking him in the eye. "Let me tell you something, Thomas. Being a father has nothing to do with blood. It has to do with showing up every day, teaching you right from wrong, being there when you need me. You are my son in every way that matters, and do not ever let anyone tell you different. Understand?" "I understand, Papa. I am glad you found Mama in the snow." "Me too, son, me too." Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The ranch prospered, growing large enough that Samuel eventually bought more land, expanding their holdings. Thomas grew into a responsible young man, taking on more and more of the ranch work. Margaret developed her mother's quick mind and her father's determination, and Samuel knew she would do well at whatever she chose to pursue. James was still young, but showed promise of being the most stubborn of the three. Priscilla's hair started showing threads of gray, and Samuel's hands grew calloused and weathered from years of hard work. They were not young anymore, but they were happy, surrounded by the life they had built together. When Thomas was 15, a man showed up at their ranch asking for work. He was older, broken down by hard living, and when he introduced himself, Samuel recognized the name, Peter Samuels. The years had not been kind to him. Whatever wealth his family had possessed was clearly gone, and he looked like a man who had lost his way. "I am just looking for honest work," Peter said, not quite meeting Samuel's eyes. "I heard you might be hiring." Samuel studied him for a long moment. The anger he might have felt years ago was gone, replaced by something closer to pity. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes. I figured it out when I asked directions in town. But I need work, and I am a good hand when I am sober. I have not had a drink in 6 months. Does Priscilla know you are here?" "No, sir. And if you would rather I move on, I understand. I do not want to cause trouble." Samuel considered. The Christian thing to do would be to give the man a chance, to show him the same mercy he had been shown so many times, but he needed to talk to Priscilla first. "Wait here," he said. He found her in the house, working on the books. When he explained who was outside, her face went very still. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "What do you want to do? He is part of your past, and if having him here would hurt you, I will send him on his way without a second thought." Priscilla was quiet for a moment, then shook her head slowly. "You know what? I do not feel anything. No anger, no hurt, nothing. He is just a man who needs work. If you think he can do the job, hire him. But Samuel, he is not to know about Thomas, not unless Thomas decides to tell him himself. Thomas deserves to make that choice." Agreed. Samuel hired Peter on a trial basis, making it clear that any drinking or troublemaking would result in immediate dismissal. To his credit, Peter worked hard and kept to himself. He never asked about Priscilla or the children, seeming to understand that he had forfeited any right to information years ago. Thomas, now a perceptive young man, figured out on his own who Peter was. Samuel found him in the barn one evening, staring at the older man from a distance. "That is him, is not it?" Thomas said. "My blood father." "Yes," Samuel said honestly. "How did you know?" "I heard some of the hands talking. They thought I was too far away to hear, but I was not." Thomas turned to Samuel. "Do you think I should talk to him?" "That is up to you, son. But I want you to know something first. No matter what you decide, no matter what relationship you might or might not have with him, it does not change anything between you and me. You are my son. That will never change." "I know, Papa. But I think I want to talk to him, just to understand where I came from." "Then you should. Just be careful. Remember, he made his choices a long time ago and he has to live with them." Thomas approached Peter a few days later. Samuel watched from a distance, ready to intervene if needed, but the conversation seemed peaceful. Afterward, Thomas came to find Samuel, his expression thoughtful. "What did he say?" Samuel asked. "He told me he was sorry. Said he was young and stupid and scared, and that running was the biggest mistake of his life. He said he did not expect forgiveness, but he wanted me to know that he regretted it every day." "You believe him?" "I think I do. But Papa, it does not matter. You are my father. He might have given me life, but you gave me everything else. I just wanted to hear him say he was sorry, and now I have. I do not need anything more from him." Samuel pulled his son into a hug, pride swelling in his chest. "You are a good man, Thomas. I am proud of you." Peter worked at the ranch for another year before moving on, heading north to try his luck in Canada. Thomas saw him off without regret, and Samuel knew his son had made peace with his past. More years passed. Margaret fell in love with the schoolteacher's son and married at 19, moving to Walla Walla but visiting often. James decided ranching was not for him and took a job with the railroad, sending letters home about all the places he was seeing. Thomas stayed on the ranch, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Samuel began to slow down. At 25, Thomas married a girl from a neighboring ranch, and within 2 years, Samuel and Priscilla were grandparents. Holding his grandson for the first time, Samuel felt the circle complete itself. This was what it had all been for, the struggle and the hard work and the love. This was the legacy they were building, a family that would continue long after they were gone. Priscilla's hair was fully gray now, and Samuel's back ached more days than not, but they were content. They sat on their porch most evenings, watching the sun set over the land they had built together, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. "You remember the day you proposed?" Priscilla asked one evening. "At the Christmas party, how could I forget? I was terrified you would say no. I was terrified you did not mean it, that you were just being kind. But you did mean it, did not you, from the very start?" "I meant every word." "Priscilla, I would choose you 1,000 times over. in the snow at the altar every single day since then. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, too. You saved my life in more ways than one." They held hands and watched the sunset, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other completely. Around them, the ranch hummed with life, the life they had created together. Cattle lowed in the distance, and somewhere inside the house, they could hear their grandson laughing. When they finally went inside for the night, Samuel paused at the door to look back at the land one more time. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, the same mountains that had been there the day he found Priscilla in the snow. The same mountains that would be there long after they were gone, watching over their children and grandchildren and all the generations to come. He thought about the young man he had been, riding fence lines and dreaming vague dreams of someday having something of his own. He thought about how close he had come to riding past that day, to missing the dark shape in the snow, to missing everything that had come after. Life, he reflected, often turned on such small moments, such seemingly insignificant choices. The choice to look a little closer, to stop instead of riding on, to open his heart instead of playing it safe. Priscilla was already in bed when he came inside, and he slipped in beside her, pulling her close. She sighed contentedly and nestled against him, and Samuel closed his eyes, grateful beyond words for the life they had built together. The years continued their steady march forward, bringing with them the joys and sorrows that came to all lives. There were more grandchildren, 5 in total eventually, and the ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's capable management. Samuel and Priscilla grew older, their steps slower but their love as strong as ever. When Samuel was 62, he took a fall from a horse and broke his leg badly. For the first time in his life, he found himself unable to work, confined to the house while his leg healed. Priscilla nursed him patiently, and he joked that she was getting back at him for all those times he had hovered over her. "You saved my life once," she reminded him. "The least I can do is make sure you take your medicine." "I think we have saved each other more times than we can count," Samuel replied. The leg healed slowly, leaving him with a limp he would carry for the rest of his days. But it did not matter much. By then, Thomas was running the ranch, and Samuel was content to sit on the porch and watch his grandchildren play, to offer advice when asked, and otherwise enjoy his well-earned rest. Priscilla's health remained strong until she was 65, when a cough that started in winter refused to go away. The doctor said it was pneumonia, and despite everyone's best efforts, she grew weaker. Samuel rarely left her bedside, holding her hand and telling her stories of all the years they had shared together. "Do not be sad," she whispered to him one evening. "We had a beautiful life together, Samuel, more than I ever dreamed possible." "We still have time," he insisted, but they both knew it was not true. She died on a spring morning with Samuel holding her hand and their children gathered around. Her last words were, "I love you." And Samuel took comfort in the fact that she left this world surrounded by the family she had fought so hard to build. The grief was profound, a physical ache in Samuel's chest that never quite went away. For weeks, he wandered through the house they had built together, seeing her everywhere he looked. But he did not break, because Priscilla had taught him how to be strong, how to face hardship and come out the other side. Thomas and his wife invited Samuel to move in with them, but he declined. He wanted to stay in the house he and Priscilla had made together, wanted to be surrounded by her memory. He spent his days working in her garden, playing with his great-grandchildren when they visited, and sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the land they had loved. On his 75th birthday, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Samuel told them all the story one more time. He told them about finding Priscilla in the snow, about choosing her and Thomas when he had no obligation to do so, about building a life together through hard work and love. The younger children listened with wide eyes, and the older ones had tears in theirs. "The point," Samuel said, "is that love is always a choice. Every day you wake up and choose the people in your life. You choose to be kind, to be patient, to forgive and be forgiven. Your grandmother taught me that. She taught me that family is not just about blood. It is about commitment and loyalty and showing up every single day." "Tell us again about the cowboy who found her," one of his great-grandchildren begged, and Samuel smiled. The cowboy was not anyone special. He was just a man who made a choice that changed his whole life. He chose compassion over convenience, love over loneliness. And because of that choice, all of you are here today. Never underestimate the power of choosing kindness, choosing love. It can change everything. Samuel lived for 3 more years after Priscilla died, long enough to see all his grandchildren grown and starting families of their own, long enough to hold his first great-great-grandchild. He died peacefully in his sleep on a warm summer night, and they buried him next to Priscilla on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. At the funeral, Thomas stood before the assembled family and told the story one more time, the story of how a cowboy found a woman in the snow and chose them both, the story of how love could transform everything. He told it so that the children would remember, so that the story would be passed down through the generations, a reminder of where they came from and the love that had made their family possible. Years later, decades later, the story was still told. The ranch remained in the family, passed down from generation to generation, and on the hill where Samuel and Priscilla were buried, their descendants would gather to remember them. They remembered the woman who had been cast out while carrying a child, who had been ready to give up until a cowboy found her in the snow. They remembered the man who had chosen love over loneliness, family over solitude, who had built something lasting out of a moment of compassion. The mountains still stood in the distance, eternal and unchanging, watching over the land Samuel and Priscilla had loved. The house they built still stood, expanded and modernized but fundamentally the same. And every generation learned the story, learned about the power of choosing love, about the difference one person could make in another's life, about how family was built not through blood alone but through choice and commitment, and showing up every single day. In the end, that was their legacy. Not the land or the cattle or the house, but the love they had chosen, the family they had built, the example they had set. They had proven that it did not matter where you started or what mistakes you had made or what circumstances you faced. What mattered was the choices you made from that point forward, the people you chose to love, the life you chose to build. And so the story lived on, told and retold, a reminder that sometimes the most important moment in a life comes down to a single choice: to stop or ride on, to help or look away, to love or remain alone. Samuel Cross had made his choice in the snow all those years ago, and it had made all the difference.